Hello and welcome to Shaman's Dream Gifts here in the Fox Run Mall. Every week we do a free fireside chat where we try to share anything from Are You Psychic and Intro to Mediumship to the story of Buddha, which was done last week, and we're going to have the young man come in and actually do the story of Buddha again. And this time we're going to ask him to bring his voice with him, for those of you that were watching it last week. You know, those Buddhists, just very soft talkers. So we're going to have to turn up his volume button and do it again. This week, my name is Dr. Kevin, and I am going to be talking on the Lost Steps of Reiki. The Lost Steps of Reiki actually first was a book that came out in 1995. And then the class went on to DVD as an actual DVD in, I'm not even sure, 2005, 2006, that talked about this from the perspective of people who had studied Reiki before. Tonight here at Shaman's Dream, we're going to be talking a little bit about Reiki, but more about the Lost Steps of Reiki and how it came about. And I'm going to share a little bit of the personal journey of the Lost Steps of Reiki with you guys. If you want to know the whole story, we have both the book and the DVD here at Shaman's Dream Gifts. And now also, I always like to make sure people know that here in the month of May at Shaman's Dream Gifts, all of our rose quartz in celebration of Mothers and Mother's Day is 10% off for the month. And this week we have fossils. We have some very interesting fossils. I should have thought to grab one to show you, but that we have fossils that are 10% off. Isn't that neat? And it works really well. It's got a little bit of a blunt point, but it's very easy to clean off if you stab somebody with it. Blood doesn't stick. Didn't stick to the fossil. Doesn't stick to what we're selling as fossils. I was asked at one point if we were calling all mothers fossils because we put rose quartz and fossils on in the same month. But I assure you that there is no. It's up to you to decide whether your mother is an old fossil or not. That's not our determination. But they are on sale this week for 10% off through till Sunday. So always check in to see what our weekly sale is. So I, as Dr. Kevin, do want to invite you to come in on Wednesdays and Thursdays where I do intuitive readings here. I do intuitive intervention sessions. So now I've done enough hype and enough pitch, and hopefully enough of you are watching. We'll get into the meat of it. So Reiki is the channeling of the universal life force energy. Some people pronounce it Reiki. I've always been taught that it was actually pronounced Reiki. Okay? Now, which could be interchanged with the idea of chi, energy. Ki or Chi are both words that mean energy. Reiki is the channeling of the universal life force energy. It is opening yourself up and allowing yourself to be used as a divine vessel to channel the universal life force energy for the healing of the person who is in front of you. The traditional story has Reiki as being discovered in the late 1800s by a man named Usui in the Orient. I was going to say Japan, which would not be wrong, but his journeys actually took him out beyond what we would think of as the traditional borders. So I like to just say the Orient. But I'm not here to tell you his story. There are several books that will tell you his story, the story of Usui, the story of Reiki itself. There are several books. I'm here to talk about the Lost Steps of Reiki and kind of how I came about writing the book, channeling the individual, Wei Chi, who gave us the information, and even how that information has turned into not one, but multiple healing systems that have a core belief that all healing should be the process of empowering one to heal oneself. And that true healing happens when the individual is actually brought in to participate in the process and to be empowered through the process. So, first of all, I'm going to step back. The year is 1994. I have now been in full-time practice coming up to around 4 years, working as a spiritual coach, counselor, catalyst, I'm working with individuals, I work with families, I do any kind of form of healing. I've been doing professional psychic work since the late 70s, so psychic work was nothing new to me. What also was going on is, I'd worked as a medical intuitive, but when I also done helped ghosts cross over and do ghost clearings and do a number of different things. I basically did whatever I was drawn by spirit to do and facilitated whatever healing that the person would allow to happen. I wasn't a whole lot into studying a lot of systems. I would pick up a book here or a book there, maybe take a class, have an interesting conversation, but I was never drawn to become a single student of a single master, so to speak. It seemed as if things kind of came to me, flowed through me. My business had been around, and my first business partner, we would go up and start talking about something, and she would have read all the books, and I would open up my mouth, and things would just fall out. And that kind of was a nice balance in the two of us. At this point, I was now with my second business partner, had redone the business and my relationships. And what had happened is that Reiki was really gaining in popularity in the early 90s. It had been around since the 50s. It had come via Hawaii, Japan via Hawaii, into the United States from Madame Takata. And the Reiki Alliance was formed. And Reiki had stayed pretty much on a kind of a low level from the 50s into the 70s. And into the late 70s and 80s, we now had this explosion in Reiki as we had a whole group of people that went, as we called, renegade Reiki, that broke off from the very traditional Usui Alliance Reiki people. My experience with Reiki at that point was that in my practice, I had a few different Reiki masters I worked with. I ran across them at festivals and fairs, and I would go and I would meet these people. But what struck me continually was that these individuals, I would be talking to them because they would be clients of mine, or I might meet them at a fair, and they were just very drawn to want to talk to me. I don't know what it is, but people tend to want to talk to me. And stuff like this. And what I would find out consistently was their lives were a mess. They were in abusive relationships, they were in no relationships, they were having massive health issues, they were having anger management issues, they were having all of these different issues. Some of them which I was helping them with. But then you would walk and they would step in and then they'd get to the point, but I'm a Reiki master. And you expected to hear kind of like the trumpets from the heavens to play. Maybe you thought robes would suddenly appear or a halo over their head because they were a Reiki master. And as a Reiki master teacher, then they were all divine love and joy and everything was perfect for the length of that class, for the length of that treatment, for the length of that discussion. And then suddenly they went into lives where there were messes again. And so it's 1994, I'm traveling around the country, as I'm traveling around the country, I start getting these messages, and these messages are very clear that Spirit wants me to study Reiki. And I was getting it in dreams, I was getting it in messages. At that point, I had been channeling for a couple of years. I was channeling the Native American Council of Grandmothers. I had channeled Ezekiel. For those of you who are not sure about channeling and trance channeling, we did a fireside chat on it. If you go to facebook.com/MyDrKevin or go to my YouTube channel, My Dr. Kevin, you should be able to find a copy of the video. But so I'm doing trance channeling, doing healing, traveling, a lot of stuff going on. And this push just keeps on coming up that I have to study Reiki. So finally I just got very quiet. And God and I had a little talk. I said, okay, look. So my first question is, if I study Reiki, do I need to have a dysfunctional life? I mean, like, can you do one without the other? Because I have no evidence of this in my experience. And at that point, I just kind of got this feeling, this sense, as it was halfway between a laugh and I'm going to slap you upside your head. That's a stupid question, but it was one I had to ask. And then I said, okay, look, if you really want me to study Reiki, I'm on the road full time. So this is what has to happen. It has to happen at a place that I'm traveling through on a regular basis. It has to be at a certain cost level because, you know, I've been doing stuff since the late 70s and I've done a lot and I do a lot of stuff. And, you know, and now traveling, this is the price range that I need to do Reiki 1, Reiki 2, Reiki Mastership, Reiki Master Teacher. So I'm willing to do it if it comes in at the right price, it's conveniently located for my travels, and that the person who is teaching me gets that I already do hands-on healing. And I'm sure there'll be differences, and I'm open to those differences, and I'm open to learning them, but I don't want to be treated like, oh, yes, you don't know anything, and I'm going to teach you everything. I said, because I will not last 5 minutes in the classroom. So those were my 3 things. I had that conversation on a Wednesday night. I remember that clearly because it was on a Wednesday night, and on Thursday I was traveling to North Carolina where I was speaking at an event. And it was a retreat at an event, and Thursday night I got in. All of the event stuff started on Friday. Checked into the hotel. My partner was tired and had decided to go to bed. I'm sitting in a wingback chair drinking a brandy. Yes, spiritual people drink. At least the spiritual person drinks. Why do you think they call them spirits? So I was imbibing some spirits in front of a fireplace in North Carolina in a wingback chair. And this woman sits down and she introduces herself, and she's one of the attendees, also a teacher at the event. We start talking. Turns out that she lives exactly where my home area is that I return to several times a year. Turns out she's a Reiki master. Turns out that even though, and I was telling her my dilemma of that I was really being pushed to study Reiki, but I wasn't really drawn to it. And she said, well, I can see why. You clearly already do hands-on healing, and you're clearly already a healer. You just need to understand the Reiki language and structure. Now, is that starting to sound familiar? Like that some of that was earlier in my story? And I said, well, what would you charge me? Well, normally I charge this, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't gonna happen. But for you, you already know this stuff, this is what I'm gonna charge. So within 24 hours, Spirit had provided a place I could do it, at a price that I had agreed to do it with somebody who completely got where I came from and who I was. So, you know, this is what happens when you make a deal with Spirit. When you make a deal with Spirit, you both win and lose at the same time. Because at the end of the day, Spirit's never really going to lose. So I studied Reiki. I went through the whole process, got my Reiki Mastership. That was at the beginning of '94 that the process started. Went through everything. At the end of '94, I become a Reiki Master Teacher. Finish everything that I needed to do. I'm sitting soaking in a hot bathtub, and I holler because I feel myself going into channel, and I know that I could easily go underneath the water. Not necessarily a good thing, because channeling does not interfere with drowning. If anyone's ever wondered, yes, you can drown while you are in channel. I don't think it serves any purposes, but it could happen. Well, that was when Wei Chi came through. Wei Chi came through and said, now you are ready. I needed you to study Reiki so that I could tell you what was missing from that which you call Reiki. So I could give you the lost steps of Reiki, but you would not be taken seriously, and you would not have had context if you had not become a Reiki master. So that was the reason I needed to become a Reiki master, was to open myself up. And like I said, I became a Reiki master in December of 1994, and opened myself up. And for the next several months, Wei Chi channeled through me and talked about the Lost Steps of Reiki. This is just a little fireside chat. We're not going to be going ding by ding by ding, lost steps. That's a whole class. That's created a whole healing system that not only encompasses Reiki, but also at this point encompasses medical intuitive, if you choose it to, chakras, excuse me, and any other number of modalities. Wei Chi had identified himself as living 5,000 years ago in the area of the world we would call Tibet. He was a Tibetan shaman, is how he defined himself. Early on, he said monk, but he then corrected and said shaman would really be the more correct term based on our languaging today of kind of what he was. And that there was him and a group of those, of people like him that went and were gifted a lot of things that it was time to seed into humanity and into the earth plane. In many cases, reseed because it had gotten lost after the last destruction of Earth, before Earth became reborn again. So he was referring to the transition after Lemuria and Atlantis into what we would call current day humanity. And at that time, he lived as long as Master needed him to live, which we figured out was probably about, from different cryptic things he said, I think it was around 2,000 years in the same body as Wei Qi. And then he walked over a mountain and showed up as a religious leader in India. Not Wei Qi. Was born into a high caste and brought a new kind of spirituality into India. He has never identified or said who he was at that time, but that's what he identified happened. When he was done in Tibet, in that general area of the world, crossed a mountain and was born again. Literally. Like popped out as a baby, grew up, and brought spirituality into India in a new form. So these are the things that Wei Qi, the first questions he asked, was that which we call Reiki. If you are to look at it carefully, it is like no other Eastern system. Now everything he said was in alignment with the Usui Reiki Alliance Reiki, which is very, very dogmatic, and I don't say that as necessarily a bad word, but they have a very strong, strict structure of exactly the way everything should be done. You're welcome to come in, just duck under the cameras. We're doing a live fireside chat. You're welcome to grab a seat. We're talking about the Lost Steps of Reiki.
Oh, we thought you were hypnotizing him or something.
No, I've been accused of being hypnotizing, but no, I'm not. So when Usui, back to Usui. So when Wei Qi was bringing that in, one of the things he said was that, you know, if you compare it to any of the other true Eastern healing systems, that in that which we were given as Reiki, that there was no client participation. The client was not asked to make any change. They were not asked to create any sense of responsibility. That the client was very passive. The client got to come in and basically say, I hurt my back, I hurt my neck, I ache, or I'm stressed out, or I'm this, or I'm that. You get a treatment, you feel better, you walk off, and then you come back a week later with the same symptoms because you've changed nothing in your life. You've had no awakening. You had no epiphanies that said, well, why am I so stressed out every week? What do I need to change? Or why does my back hurt every week? Do I need a new mattress? Why am I limping every week? Do I need a new pair of shoes? Or do I need to be more careful where I'm walking? So Wei Qi talked about that originally it was a longer system. And it was done over moon cycles. And that the first part of the system was actually getting the client to become aware through the filling out of the paperwork and through the first 2 sessions where the practitioner's job was actually to see to see if the client really even understood what their life was, who they were, how were they living their life, what kind of choices were they making. More questions than answers for the person, but to also understand in those first couple of sessions, who is this person? Where are they in each of their paths? Like intellectually, where are they? And you know, I don't want to be trying to teach algebra to somebody who, you know, is hanging out at 2 + 2 is 4, I think. Who you want to open up their heart to be emotionally loving to themselves and the world, and their idea of love is, please don't hit me. So, or that you're opening up somebody to the idea that there is a spirituality, that they're part of them, that makes them divine, when they think that they were born sinful and as a mistake and deserve to be punished. You've got to first of all figure out where the person is before you can decide where you're going to take them. Then you have to find out, and they have to participate in it. So not only would there be questions, and there would be questions that would make, not just give the practitioner information, but also questions that would make the person think, be part of the process. Then there was homework. The most homework that I'm trying to remember, the most homework that I ever gave in a single Wei Chi session, and there are 7 treatments in a treatment series that was in the original treatment series, and it was done on an arc of moon cycles. I believe there was one person that after a 2-hour session was handed 114 homework assignments I had written for them, that they had 2 weeks to work on. Were they going to get 114 homework assignments done? No. But if they read all 114 questions at least 3 or 4 times, some of that homework was being done in their head. And you know you're doing your job as a Wei Chi practitioner when the person comes in giving you answers for questions you haven't even asked yet. Because you got them to think differently. You got them to actually increase their awareness and take ownership on their life. So this is the healing cycle. And then as you're doing this and you're leading them to their own epiphanies and their own ownership, there's a very simple that I do in the trainings, and I'm looking to see if there's anything. Well, I'll use this. The Lost Steps of Reiki DVD. So I have somebody here in the live in the audience, because you can come to these live. I know I'm scary. I'm scary enough on film. Probably you think, yeah, being in the same room with you, don't know about that. That is a public place, so you're partially safe. So anyways, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a very simple little exercise, which is that I'm going to just toss this. Person off screen is catching it. Then they're going to toss it back to me. And they caught it. Okay. And now, without them leaving the chair, without them moving, so right where they are, I'm going to ask them to toss this to me. Toss it to me. Go ahead. Toss it to me. Why are you tossing it to me? They're shaking their head. They're like, well, how am I going to toss it to you? I don't have it, right? If they don't own it, they can't get rid of it. If you don't own a reality in your life, you cannot change it. If you don't own a thought process or a belief system in your life, you cannot throw it away. You can come in. We're just doing a free fireside chat, but you're welcome to step under the cameras to go look around. Oh. So, anyways. So one of the things, so in Wei Chi, we help people to have greater awareness, greater ownership, and then the knowledge that they can change that which they no longer need to hold on to because now they realize it. During the Wei Chi, there is also transformations, embracings, releasings. There are visualizations. And this person goes through a process that when the process is done, the last step of the process is for them to decide what needs to be their next process. But along the way, if they've been paying attention and the practitioner has been doing their job, they've been picking up tools and skill sets and can begin the plan of how to be their own healer. Now, it doesn't mean that we still don't always need to go back. Sometimes we need another perspective or things like this. But there is nothing in a traditional Reiki treatment from an Usui Reiki Alliance member, not a renegade, because renegades have added all sorts of things and they're inconsistent and some may be great and some may not be great. And we used to call this Wei Chi Reiki, but we got lumped into all the renegade. And Wei Chi came out very clearly and said that he didn't even want the Reiki name associated with it. It uses the same energy as we think of as Reiki, and the book is out and will always be the Lost Steps of Reiki. But it was also very clear. Come on in. We're just going to ask that you duck under the cameras. We're just doing our fireside chat. So you're welcome to come in and just duck under and Feel free to shop. We're just closing down, actually. So there is nothing in a traditional Reiki session that is ever going to empower you to make change in your life with knowledge and consciousness. It is a very passive system. It is a very westernized system. It is all about symptoms and not about causes. It's all about fixing, not about the person making change and taking responsibility. So that's just a little bit. There's a lot about it. I mean, if somebody wants to become a Wei Chi practitioner, that's 1,500 to 2,000 hours of training. But they can become an apprentice, which is just a couple of weekends. And you learn how to do a clinic treatment, which still combines all of the aspects at a very light level, but still very powerful. I have people out there all across the country and Europe who do nothing but do the Wei Chi clinic treatments and are still giving their people extremely powerful results that they become empowered, more in their own divine, more self-healing, and more ready to go out and be who they came here to be. So again, I want to thank you. My name is Dr. Kevin Ross Emery. You can find out more about me at mydrkevin.com. That's MYDRKEVIN, or weboflight.com, WEBOFLIGHT. Come to my Facebook fan page, facebook.com/mydrkevin. I am here at Shaman's Dream right now every Wednesdays and Thursdays offering intuitive intervention sessions. But you can also send me an email, come to my website, like my fan page, send me a message. I'm all over. I work all over from the Connecticut border up to Portland, and then I'm hopping other places whenever the mood suits me. Thank you very much for coming. Come in and take advantage of some of our specials. And next week, have you lived before? And if you have, what does it mean? And why would you want to know? And how can you have future growth through past lives? We'll be discussing reincarnation. Thank you very much.